I thought I was a party girl. I had like this identity as like this wild, fun party girl. And and I just, that I could never get enough. You know how that feeling like you start drinking and then instantly more kicks in? Like I just want
Mhm,
more. And I just
mhm.
had no off switch.
Connect with us on the Emotion Wellness Podcast for a transformative journey of human connection. Witness personal stories, improve your mental health education, and acquire valuable resources for optimizing your well-being. And visit emotionwellness.com for more information.
Let's go. All right, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome to the Emotion Wellness Podcast. I'm here with my brother, Jason Turner.
What's up, Frank?
And we are here with our special guest today, all the way from Idaho, best-selling author, Arlina Allen. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be with you guys.
I'm so happy to have you on. We had a podcast not too long ago, and I got very emotional on your podcast, and we said, let's do it again. Let's have you on our podcast. So here we are today, and I want to congratulate you on 31 years of sobriety. That is an amazing feat, and you're totally a light in our world, in our recovery community, and we want to welcome you to the show today. How you doing?
Doing great. I mean, it is Friday. We're just kind of joking around. Like, I was like, happy Friday, but you're like, every day is a happy day. And I was like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Things could be a lot worse.
So Arlina, let me know. I don't really know much about you. You know a lot about me. I kind of want to know, where did you grow up? Who is Arlina? What got you into recovery? So give us a little background about where you're from, kind of your upbringing, what that was like, and kind of what got you into the space of addiction and then recovery.
Yeah, I mean, so I always kind of like to start with my family of origin. Daddy's from Kentucky, and my mother was from Mexico City. Very nice, upstanding people. My dad was a Marine. He's a not a war veteran, but he was a Marine. And you would think that he was kind of, a tough guy, but he was really the softy in the family. My mom was kind of the hard ass disciplinarian. But they were just like my parents didn't drink or swear or anything like that. Just so, all this to say my parents are good people and I learned all this dysfunction on my own. It's very clever that way. There was a couple of things that happened to me though when I was growing up. I grew up in Sunnyvale, California. That's sort of where like all the tech is, Silicon
Is
Valley.
that northern?
Yeah, Northern California. So we're just like about an hour south of San Francisco.
Got it.
Yeah, so the Bay Area they call it, but and there was like a lot of tech that we grew up around, and my mom worked for like tech companies and stuff. My dad was like a Lockheed FMC kind of guy. FMC was like how the old guys called their jobs outfits. So he
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. So he was like a contract negotiator for FMC, and they built the Bradley tank. So on the
Oh wow.
outside, he kind of seemed like he was like a hard ass, but he wasn't. He was a softie. He was super religious. He would tell us Bible stories and start blubbering and crying. So he
I
was a
love that.
crier. Yeah, he was a softie, that one. But there was a couple of things that happened to me when I was really young that sort of changed the trajectory of my life. So I had been abused by a neighbor starting at the age of 5. I was really young. And then
Oh,
my parents actually divorced when I was 7. And those two things really had an effect on my self-esteem. I think when you're really young, you just assume responsibility for things that aren't yours, right? And that was true for me. I thought what was happening to me was my fault. I felt like, dad leaving was my fault. He always stayed close by. He was very active in my life all the time, total stand-up dude. But it did feel like abandonment, and little kids don't really have the ability to articulate, their feelings. I just knew something was wrong, and at the end of the day, everything felt like my fault. My mom was somebody who had a lot of anger when we were growing up. And she had two predominant feelings. She was either really happy or really pissed. And I felt like she saved her happy face for the outside world. You know, she'd be on the
Mm,
phone talking to her girlfriends, hang up the phone and turn around and start screaming at us. Or
mm.
like we were back in the day, latchkey kids. Were you guys
Yeah,
latchkey kids?
I
Yes.
was. Yes, I was. Yes.
Right. So that's when we were like left home alone, right? And I would hear her car pull up in the driveway after work, and my heart would drop, and I would look around
Mm,
the house for what I didn't do because I was going to get yelled at no, almost no matter what. And I think she just had a lot of anger in her, and she didn't have a lot of coping skills. She was actually born and raised in Mexico City. She was one of five kids. My grandmother didn't have a lot. She was a very critical parent. So kind of, you know how it rolls downhill. It's like intergenerational
it
trauma.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets passed down.
Yeah. My grandmother was one of 10. She's still alive. She's 98 years old. She's like,
God bless.
she's like the bitter ones always last the longest. Bless her heart. But yeah, so I had very low self-esteem when I was growing up, and then that sort of set the stage for, and no coping skills either, right? So, you know, mom's feelings were primarily either happy or pissed. Mine were primarily guilty and wrong, right? I just felt like there was always something wrong with me. And I got a lot of validation from like literally performing. We used to belong to a Mexican dance company. So I would dance on stage at the Capitol. We'd do all these things. And so I got so much joy and bliss out of all that. But it kind of set the stage because even now as an adult, it's very difficult for me not to get all my validation from doing and achieving, right? And giving and all that stuff. So um, that's kind of what happened to sort of set the stage when I was young, and then I started drinking really young. It was between 8 and 10. The first time I drank, my mom had
Oh
gone
wow.
out. Yeah, I was young. You know what's funny is like I have two boys, and when they were about that age, I would look at my kids and go, "Oh my gosh, I can't imagine my kids feeling so bad about themselves that they felt the need to do that." Do
Right.
you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
looking
I
at your
do.
kids and being like, "Oh my God, my babies." But that's what happened. I felt the need to do that at a really young age. And I'm not even sure where I got this idea, probably from like the neighbors or something, watching their parents drink, because mine didn't. But my mom was out on a date, and I have an older sister who was like the goody two shoes, the compliant child, straight A student. She just wanted to fly under the radar. I was kind of the opposite of her. And so I remember thinking, oh, wouldn't it be fun to drink some of that booze that's, you know, it was like this dusty old bottle in the cabinet. Probably somebody left it there from a party or something. I don't really know. I just remember it was like clear glass and brown liquid. And I remember that first drink, like the anticipation of doing something bad, like it was exciting. And then, but that first drink, the way it like burned my lips and the way it burned all the way down. But then when it hit bottom, like this warmth spread through my whole body. And it was like all this self hatred and self consciousness and self loathing that I had was suddenly lifted. And the juxtaposition of those two feelings, like I didn't realize how bad I felt until I felt good, right?
Mm, mm.
The stark contrast of those two feelings really like it burned in my psyche forever. I was like, oh my God, this is the thing, right? This, you take something and you get relief. And that was kind of how it started. I feel like I
Wow.
should take a breath and let you ask a question. Otherwise, I will just go on and on.
Well, let me ask you this. Well, thank you for that. Let me ask you this. How long did that drinking persist? Like like you started at 8. When did it really take off into, alcoholism?
Yeah, you know what's funny? Like, I feel like that was alcohol use disorder from the first time I drank. Because the first time I drank, party till you puke, that's what I did, and I had an older sister that kind of cleaned me up and put me to bed. And she was the one keeping my secrets. I found out later is because she thought she was going to get in trouble. Like she would be held responsible for my behavior. Like, so there was all this codependency. But I mean, so that was problematic from like the first time. But obviously, I wasn't a daily drinker at 8 or 10 years old, whatever that was. It didn't really start kicking in until I was in junior high. And junior high is when I started smoking weed and doing all that stuff. I actually switched schools. And so I had to, in the morning, I would go from my mom's house to my friend's house, and her parents drank, and they had all kinds of booze at their house. I was drinking before school sometimes. Like we would water down the bottles, her parents' bottles and stuff, so that they would know that it really wasn't my friend. It was mostly just me. But I was drinking before school at like 14 years old, 15 years old. But I didn't really get into trouble. Like the trouble didn't happen till much later, like graduating high school. And then that's when it was on. Like I moved out of my parents' house when I was 17. I just did not get along with them. And that's when then I could smoke and drink as much as I wanted. And then it was just like this series of what I would call episodes where we would go out. And it wasn't every night that I lost my damn mind. But, when I did lose my mind, it was because I had been drinking. Right. And I was just one of those girls I thought I was a party girl. I had like this identity as like this wild, fun party girl. And I just, that I could never get enough. You know that feeling like you start drinking and then instantly more kicks in? Like I just want more. And I just had no off switch. And yeah, it was wild. And I had these alter ego personalities that would come out. It was either like Wimpy Wendy or Badass Betsy, because I was either fighting or crying when I was drinking. I could never predict who was going to come out, but sometimes both of them. It was pretty crazy. But yeah, so I started to crash and burn when I was about 23. I had like the worst night of my life with my sister. I had sort of burned through all my friends, and she was the only one who would go out with me. And we went out to this bar, and I got totally shit-faced and was in a blackout. The police were called at some point. I had physically assaulted my sister. She was driving my car home. And I, punched my windshield in a couple places and broke it. And it was just like total mayhem. And the next morning I woke up with like that sinking, sickening feeling that something terrible had happened the night before. And I didn't know what it was. So I had to tuck my tail between my legs and go over to my mom's house where my sister was. And she told me everything that happened. And it was awful. And it was so humiliating knowing that my mom knew everything, because she didn't raise us to be like that. Like my mom was very prim and proper, and she didn't raise me to be like that. So it was just such a humiliating experience. And my sister told me that she was going to start going to Al-Anon. And the insanity is I kind of clutched my pearls. I was like, because of me? You're going to go to Al-Anon because of me? Like, I was shocked. Like, that's how like intense my denial was. So that's when I started to question my drinking. I was like, am I an alcoholic? When did I cross the line? What about all my other friends who drink just like I do? Are they alcoholic? And it just seemed like as I asked the questions, like more questions would come up. And it led me, so I tried to moderate my drinking for 2 years. And I tried everything, like eating before you go out, or a glass of water, switching from beer and wine, from hard alcohol to, beer and wine. And I would leave a glass of water and aspirin next to my bed when I went to sleep at night, knowing that I would come home and have that 3 a.m., like parched,
Ugh.
Remember that? Like, oh, I'll never forget that. But I would just get so sick the next day. I used to vomit so hard. I would have these little broken blood vessels under my eyes. It's a petechia. It's like when those little red dots. I would just get so sick and be like, I'm never doing this again. And then by about, you know how it is, like 8 or 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday, all your friends are going out. I'm like, I'm out of here. And the insanity would ensue.
The insanity of the drink and the drug.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's listening to your stories. It's so interesting, and I love this process because physically hearing you, like watching you on screen, but listening to the punching the windows and having this, it doesn't match up, right? Like you see the person that you're looking at is like, wait a minute, what? Like this is
Yeah.
who you were doing what? And it
Yeah.
does that to so many of us. There's like that Jekyll and Hyde. There's so many. It's like that's pretty normal, but every time it's in front of me, I'm always in awe of how much it changes us and how much it, we don't really represent our true self when we're under the influence.
And it's beautiful for the listeners and people watching to see you today and how you are, and then explain who you were, and it gives so much hope to people that are struggling in addiction or alcoholism, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We are the light. We're showing you guys that there's another way, and you're showing them. And so back to that, let me ask you, like, what was the, moment of clarity for you? What was the thing that said, you know what, like that spark from God or whatever it was that led you down this new way of living?
Yeah. It was a buildup of hating who I was. Like I was cheating on my boyfriend. I was dating married men. I was irresponsible with money. I was like a terrible person. I really was. I was creating a lot of wreckage. I was terrible to my friends. And I didn't want to be like that. Like that wasn't who I wanted to be. I just wanted to let people know, like I was a terrible person, but I didn't want to be. It was like I almost had no control over my values. Do you know what I mean? I was just
I do.
lost. I was so
I do.
lost. I was definitely like in survival mode, just trying to get my needs met, and I was just super dysfunctional. I was really sick. And then what ended up happening is had been dating this guy who I thought was my ideal, right? And I was losing him because of my drinking. And so it was my 25th birthday, and we had gone out to like a cowboy bar. And I did my usual thing where I got totally shit faced. I was dancing with some other guy on the dance floor. I mean, I was just doing all kinds of weird stuff. And on the way home, we were in the truck and we were coming up to the apartment. We lived together and I was going to get sick. And so he pulled up along the parkway, like where the grass is. And I opened the door, but I was so drunk, like I couldn't figure out that my seatbelt was still on.
Oh,
I leaned over and was like, click. And I like tumbled out of the car and got sick. And he just kind of like shut the door and parked the car. He's like, no one's going to bother her, And I just woke up the next morning so sick. And I looked at him and I said, I am never going to drink again. And I didn't. That was the last. I took a big bong hit right after that. But I never had a drink of alcohol since then. And so I hadn't had a drink for about 5 months. And then I went to a 12-step program. I went to AA. And he broke up with me and, we separated and all that. And I was living on my mom's couch for a while again. It was like, I'm 25 years old. I had this sales job that I just totally blew the relationship. I had like nothing. I was like starting over, living on mom's couch. It was so humiliating. And I had to start over again. And so I show up to this 12-step meeting. Actually, when I was in sales, I had two customers that were both sober. And these guys were fine, upstanding men of the program. They were sort of breaking off little bits of wisdom to me over time, the sort of like leading up to all this. They were like saying things like, if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting. And that was like mind blowing to me. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Oh my God. And they were like breaking off all these little chunks of wisdom. And I was just sort of like slowly starting to assimilate all this information. And when it came time to go to a meeting, they were like, oh, by the way, you don't get to count your sober date until you quit everything, until you're completely abstinent. I was really disappointed about that. I thought I had 5 months sober. Alas, no. But I understand why they were saying that to me, because I needed to be clear-minded. I needed to sort of re-engage with my feelings. Like, I don't know if it's Pink Floyd, but like that comfortably numb, like that was my anthem. I just wanted to be comfortably numb. And that weed was doing that for me. But I didn't know that I actually needed my feelings. Like my feelings were sort of like my internal guidance system. And I was just completely shut off from all of it, right? And so putting everything down allowed me to start reconnecting to all my feelings. And I always liken it to, those old-timey pictures with the switchboard operators, right? It's
Hmm.
always a gal with some tight hairdo and she's sitting in front of a panel of holes and she's got all these plugs. It was like the plugs were like the feelings, and I just wasn't able to identify what they were. I had all these feelings, and I just didn't know how to identify them. But I needed to be sober first to be able to, and I needed a community, people who would help me talk things through, so that I could start identifying things like, I was very clear about happy and angry. Those were about the only two feelings I was super clear on. I started identifying lonely, sad, confused, feeling lost, and so it was just really a process. But that's kind of what happened. It's like I had like this moment of clarity, like I'm never going to drink again, and then it was a slow process of actually finding the right kind of help that I could. Like I didn't have any money, so it was really nice to be able to have like these people in a community, and I didn't have any friends left either. So it was like this community. I found all the young people, and they sort of enveloped me. And I was really lucky that I was in a big city with a ton of meetings, so that I could find meetings that felt right for me. And that's how it started. That's how I got sober.
So what does it look like for you, after that? What does the journey look like for you in recovery on the sobriety journey? How has that looked after the moment of clarity?
Well, it was interesting because when I showed up to 12 step, I had a lot of, I bumped up against a lot of obstacles. Like the first thing they were talking about God, and I was like, oh, here we go. This isn't going to work for me because me and God were not friends anymore. Like I grew up in the church and I had been begging God to fix me my whole life. And still human. I just was so disappointed that I wasn't, struck perfect, or I don't know what I was expecting, but God failed me. Let's be clear. God failed me. And we know that that's not true, but that's what I
Right,
was thinking at the time.
right.
And so I met this gal and I was like, look, if this is what this is, I'm not going to be able to do it. And she's like, oh, it's not a thing. Don't worry about it. She's like, let's just for funsies, a little writing exercise, make a list of all the things you would want God to be. And then we'll make a list of all the things that you don't want God to be. So I was like, okay, I think what makes sense. She was like, what makes sense to you? And I was like, well, the energy of love, compassionate, forgiving, powerful. That was kind of where I was starting. And then all the things I didn't want it to be was judgmental, condemning, jealous, punishing, like all the negative things, right? And she was like, okay, are you done? And I was like, yeah. She said, she let me see your paper. So I handed it to her. She tore it in half. And she gave me the good side. And she's like, we're just going to start with this. And I was like, that's it. She said, that's it. And I was like, okay. So that was like the first hurdle that I needed to get over. And from there, it just has grown and expanded. And she said, pay attention to the spiritual experiences. Be on the lookout for spiritual experiences because you and I can, like, you have a really powerful story. We hear these really amazing stories. But until you have your own experience, it is not the same. And so I started having what I would call like these spiritual experiences where things would happen. The only way that I could explain it was that there was some sort of loving force that was guiding me. Like, for instance, when my boyfriend and I broke up, I was driving his car and God bless him, he let me use it for a little while. But he's like, I need my car back. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my sponsor was like, oh, just pray to God for help, for guidance, and just whatever. And I was like, okay. And out of the blue, that's my sort of sign that this is God working in my life. Out of the blue, my dad comes over and says, hey, your grandmother is starting to give away some of her money, some of the inheritance a little early. And I got $10,000. I'm going to split this between you and your sister. I was like, what? Like a $5,000 just landed in my lap out of the blue so that I could buy a car. So I bought a car that I could afford. I had 6 months of insurance. I can't remember last time I had 6 months of insurance because I was spending all my money on weed and booze. So much, you know. And I was like, what is happening? I was like, there might be something to this. So that's kind of how, and then God kept putting people in my life that were helping me like right at the right time. And so that's kind of how it started. And I met a lady early on who said she'd be my sponsor. I kept going to meetings and they were saying, "Oh, you need to get a sponsor, and it needs to be a woman." And let me tell you, I was terrified of women because I spent so much time and energy decorating the outside. I felt like there was nothing. I had nothing on the inside to offer other women in terms of friendship, or I just felt like I was nothing, basically. But this lady remembered my name the second time she met me. Arlina is not a super easy name to remember. But she remembered my name the second time she met me. And I was like, oh my God, she is the one. So I asked her, you know, how I asked her to be my sponsor is I said, would you be willing to listen to my inventory? Because I kept hearing people were doing steps 1, 2, and 3 and relapsing. And I was terrified of that. I was terrified I was going to drink again. And she said, you know what? I would be honored. And that just reduced me to tears. Like, she would be honored. Like, what is that? She said, but we're going to start with step 1. And that's kind of how we started. And I dove into this solution as like my life depended on it because I felt like it did. Because there was a time when I, you know, stood at the abyss and looking over in that black hole thinking, I don't know if I can do this anymore at all. Right. But she was like this light beacon of hope for me. And she was like, I got so lucky. She was just such a kind, compassionate person who would not give me advice, but she would tell me what she did and the results that she got. So she was very into cause and effect. She would pray every day. She would go to a lot of meetings. She would be in service. And what I didn't know was that service was a great way to start rebuilding my self-esteem. It's hard to look into the eyes of gratitude and feel like shit about yourself, right? And so she was helping me regain my self-esteem. She took me through all the steps. It was just the hill I will die on is the steps are a worthy endeavor. It's an amazing transformational process. I'm not saying it's the only way to go or you got to do it forever, but I had an amazing experience with it, and that's what helped me get sober.
You totally reminded me of my own experience, especially with I didn't have an experience with a spirituality or God prior to getting sober. There just wasn't a thing in my life. I didn't have something to hate or not. You know what I mean? It was like I'm just
That's pretty good.
Much thought, but holy smokes, your story about the car and saying like when you can hear about these experiences, but until you have them yourself. And the book talks about focusing on getting right spiritually and everything else works out, right? And I remember thinking these people kept pushing that on me when I was in the program early on. I'm like, wait a minute, I got bills to pay, dude. Like, what do you mean? Like, just pray and it's gonna just like this? Okay, great. And I remember telling my sponsor, I think God's like an imaginary friend for adults. And he was like, how many friends do you got, dude? Like, how many do you have? And I was like, oh, so that's kind of what started. And the minute I prayed, I was in that irresponsible. I was in the military. Right outside the base, they were preying on soldiers to get high interest rate car loans, and they do all that stuff right to the young guys. So I got this car loan, and I ended up not being able to pay for the truck. And though I was a terrible human being, I also had this compassion. And I just went to the guy one day that after I bought it, and I'm like, I'm going to go to prison because I did some stuff in the military. I'm not going to be able to pay for your vehicle. So can I give it back to you? This is when I was active in my drinking. And I did that. And he was grateful that he didn't have to hunt the car down and all that, right? And fast forward, I don't even know how many years it is. I'm in a situation in early sobriety where I need money. And I get 5 checks that total the exact amount I needed at the time in the mail from the car dealer because they did their books and they realized that when I turned the car in, they were willing to give me back some of my down payment. And it's like, who does that? First of all, a used car salesman, not to be judgmental, but they don't come with the most reputable, right? And so out of nowhere, I start getting checks, and that led me on a path to go, maybe there is something to this. So when you told that story, it was like right in line with what my experience.
It's amazing because it's just so true of how when we step into this new version of ourselves through doing the healing deep work, how when we really focus on prayer and service, how God will start to put the right people in our place to carry the mission out we're supposed to do, our true purpose. It's actually beautiful.
I hadn't done deep work at that point. I just want to be clear. I was like, just like, I'm going to go to meetings and get sober. It was the deep work came many years
But God
later.
gives the wings to us, bro, to make us go down that path.
I would argue that surrendering is the deepest work you can do, and it happens in a flash. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the surrender of like, okay, I give up. There's something about that. There's something so powerful about surrender. Like when I gave up and I was like, okay, God, whatever, like freedom from the bondage of self, may I do that, trying to do God's will or whatever, like the complete, like utter, whatever, there's something about that energy that it's like relaxing in a way. Like when you surrender, you're open-handed. You're like, okay, and there's something where, your energy just totally changes and allows for things to come to us. But that is deep work. It's hard to get to that place of surrender, for sure.
It truly is, and thinking about, and not to get off topic, because it's your show, but today is the day that I came back from death, and talk about surrender, second step. God is everything, He is nothing. Thank God for recovery. Thank God for the steps, because in those moments of facing my death, I was ready to abandon my life, my son, my wife, my future to God. Thank God for the program that it given me these new tools to be able to navigate through this thing called life, But there is so much beauty in the surrender.
Yeah. It really is. Yeah, I think it's just fear that if we decide to give our lives up to God or follow God's will, like if you're a creative, like God's going to want you to be an accountant, or like, you know what I mean? Like, God, what if God wants me to do something horrible? Why would God want you to do something horrible? Like, that's not attractive. Like God is like the ultimate marketing guy. He wants to make you look good, so we're attractive. Right?
Yeah, there's nothing about surrender initially when you're faced with it, even if you're not in a ton of pain, that resonates with, to use Frank's term, abundance. They don't go together in the mind, right? It's like surrender doesn't mean abundance. Surrender means scarcity. It means a loss. And it's quite the opposite. It opens up a door of complete abundance and like opportunity that I never had prior to, getting sober. I have a question for you regarding your book.
Yeah.
How long in the process, being sober, where were you at when you decided to write the book, and what was and I'm a therapist, so in therapy we would talk about what's the precipitating event? Like what led you to this moment of I'm going to write a book?
Well, so I've been doing my podcast for about 9 years. I've been sober, I don't know, like 27 or 28 years at this point. And I've been in the online recovery community for quite some time. And when I do a pre-interview chat with somebody, just to kind of screen them, I like to break the ice to, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. It just makes for a better conversation when you interview somebody. I would always ask people, are you 12-step oriented? Because some people are very, they follow like some of the traditions to the letter about not claiming membership and things like that. So I want to be respectful for people's comfort level with that. But whenever someone said, no, I'm not 12-step oriented, I couldn't help myself. I'd always have to ask why. And I would listen, and I wouldn't typically give feedback, but I would listen, and every reason in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's not a thing. Like, oh, it's a religious program. Oh, I couldn't get past the God thing. I couldn't get past the powerlessness, the concept. I feel like it's a abdicating responsibility. Like they want to take personal responsibility. It's abdicating responsibility to this higher power. It's a weak position. All these things, I was like, that's a misperception. and it's lacking context and perspective, right? And so I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, because of, and then there's all these people online, someone goes to a 12-step program, they have a bad experience with the people typically, right? A meeting or a person, and they go, AA sucks. Like it's a religious cult. These old timers are super judgy and controlling. And, there's always, and then they go online and these keyboard warriors talking about how horrible it is. And I'm like, oh my God, that's not a thing. Like they're putting out, and then because of AA's position about, media and promotion and stuff like that, nobody is like checking it. Nobody's saying that that's not what that is. Like, that's not a thing. That's a misperception. That's lacking context and perspective. And so I just couldn't take it anymore. I'm like, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to do it. But I'm coming from this place of like, first of all, let's acknowledge somebody's pain. If somebody is vulnerable and scared and desperate enough to go to a meeting and they were met with, condemnation or were treated badly by somebody or whatever, like, I am so sorry that happened. But the first thing I say in the book is that the steps and the people, the meetings, are two separate things.
Yes, they are. I love that you said that.
The program is the steps.
Yes, it is.
No person who represents the organization. And so if you meet an asshole at AA, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, you don't know what you're giving up. And basically, you're allowing a bad person or a bad person, you know what I'm saying? You're allowing somebody who is sick to take away a gift that is rightly yours, right? It just drives me crazy. It just drives me crazy. I'm like, hey, they don't represent the organization. And all these people online say, oh, AA is a cult. And let's just pretend that it is. What is the purpose of this cult? They're trying to help. It says in the book that it's to help you gain access to power so that you could quit drinking. How is that a bad thing? Right?
Arlina, I haven't read your book. I definitely am curious after meeting you, and I plan to. Is the premise of your book to answer those questions? Is that
so it's called the 12-Step Guide for Skeptics, and the tagline is clearing up common misconceptions of a path to sobriety. So I'm not saying it's the path or anything like that. I'm sort of a recovery agnostic. Like, however you get sober is fine. Yeah. I'm just saying, why wouldn't you take all the tools? Like, we took all the drugs. we slept with all the partners. We like variety. Like, why wouldn't you try this?
I know, I agree. So what my mind went to, and I'm a pretty I have a pretty strong personality, and I'm pretty convicted in certain things. And so I think about, it was a long time ago now, but when I was 27 years old and faced with the prospect of going to a meeting, I haven't thought about this. I'm really just acknowledging a thank you to you for what you just said, and also to highlight the importance of you taking on the mission of like, hey, let's clear up some misconceptions, because here's the truth. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm known for that, but I'm not trying to be in this moment. Had I met one of those people, and I've been around enough to know there's plenty of them, right? The not so great ambassadors for the program. At my first meeting, I would have left. And if I had left, I would have never, ever come back. Like, that's just right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't know that it was at a time where the online wasn't a thing. I wouldn't have gone on. But I literally, being so sensitive and so vulnerable, and there's a great responsibility for people, and it's where my source of frustration comes from at times with the people, not the program, of like being kind and considerate that never hurt anyone, right? And you're not going to hurt a newcomer by being soft with them in the beginning, and there's no need to do the other thing. And if you don't know the group norms and you don't understand the culture, and you're not, you know what I mean, you're at that vulnerable state. I know for a fact my entire life would have probably been much shorter, much more miserable, and I would have never gotten sober had I just know that. I would have walked in and been like, I was that guy. I'm giving this one shot. In fact, that guy's got a hat on and he says he's from Texas. I'm from New Hampshire. I don't belong here. Like, that's how my mindset, you know? So it really hit me just now, the importance of that work. And I have a question for you. I'm curious if this came into your view when you were considering the book. There is such protective energy with AA, right? You kind of know where I'm going, right? So were you hesitant, or did that fear come into you of like, oh, people will say X, or I'll be considered that person who's trying to change the program? Did you have to fight through that? And if so, how did you?
Yeah, I really did. It was sort of a terrifying prospect, but it was like the pain of not saying it was greater than the pain of actually saying
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I love that.
And because I'm so grateful that, 31 years ago, there was nothing else. There was nothing else that long ago. And I was so desperate. But here's the thing. In the book, I talk about recovery resistance, right? We have this resistance. Everybody wants transformation in their current belief system, right? So we are confronted with really challenging ideas like powerlessness, unmanageability, things like that, having to wrestle with this idea of needing power, right? A higher power. I came from like God's not going to do for you what you can do for yourself kind of upbringing, and you need to figure it out. Like I was abandoned emotionally and neglected the majority. I had to figure it out. And so trying to overcome my internal need for self-reliance, and by the way, extreme self-reliance is a sign of trauma, and I didn't know that. But it's like that we have all this resistance to all these ideas. It's like the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off.
Yeah,
Right?
and it'll sting too.
Oh man, it hurts. And I just have so much compassion for people who are like, I just like, your brain is going to throw up all kinds of reasons why not to do it. And it wasn't until I was so desperate that I was like in that place of surrender, right? But it was like I had all this resistance. So you're going to come up with like, I don't like that guy's hat. I don't like that way she's looking at me. I don't like the way, I'm a woman. Everything is he. It was written, by a bunch of old white dudes, right? In the 1930s. And I was like, none of this relates to me. It's like chapter to the wives. How condescending is that? It's like my feminist side was like, rawr, like I was.
In addition, though, I love that chapter because I circled all the stuff where it said take it easy on them and like give them a break. That language in that chapter where I was trying to get the girl I was getting sober for. I'm like, hey, read this chapter. This is like it's telling you not to come at me. Don't get so angry and all that.
It was
stuff.
for the boys, is why they wrote that. But this book needed to be for me, so I was having to do a lot of mental gymnastics to try to translate this into something that would make sense for me as a woman, right? And so, yeah, I'm not surprised it worked for you. That was just like an additional hurdle I needed to overcome.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, it's a big one. It's probably one of the biggest ones.
Wow. So the wives, rude. Anyway, it's fine because I'm just playing. But yeah, it was like, we come so scared and broken. And it's like we're confronted with all this stuff that we need to sort through. And it can be daunting. So I have a lot of compassion for people who try to go and it doesn't work out. I just kind of want to take them aside and go, hey, there is a path around every obstacle, and it's so worth it to try to find the path around, because what you get is so amazing that it's so worth it. And I think that's the thing that people miss is like, why are we doing this to begin? We want that freedom. We want that joy. We want to be able to, for me, recovery was about letting go of all my survival skills, all my armor, right? All the masks that I had to wear to survive. And what it really has been is this process of emerging, feeling safe enough to let my authentic self emerge and be free of other people's opinions and all that stuff. It's like this, it's this joy and freedom and potential, and That's why we're doing all this, right? Let's be free of all that stuff that no longer serves us and embrace this amazing life of abundance that I know that you guys talk about all the time.
Yes.
Well, you make me think of the line in the book, "Have you a sufficient substitute?" It's like,
Yes.
yes, we do, you know?
Man, isn't it what an undersell though, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's a sufficient substitute. Man, this was like and they also talk about being rocketed into the fourth dimension. We should be talking about being rocketed. Like that feels amazing.
Yeah.
Like the things that start happening. Can I just share this one? Talk about spiritual experiences. Like I went to this meeting one time, and I'd been sober for quite a while. And my very first sponsor was in the room. And the way they did it there is like the chairperson will share their experience, strength, and hope. And then they pick a topic and then they call on other people. And so when I speak at meetings, I typically say a little prayer and I'm like, God, just have me say whatever it is that you would have me say. And I kind of have a rap, right? I've been telling my story for decades. And so I kind of have a rap. And this one day, for whatever reason, I share my sobriety day. It was April 23rd of 94. I never say that, but whatever. That's what came out. And I pick a topic, I think it was like faith or fellowship or something like that. And I call my very first sponsor. I see that Marianne was there. I was like, hey, Marianne, do you want to share? And she's like, you know what? Thank you for calling me, but I'm going to pass my time to Tammy. And I'd never seen Tammy before. Tammy gets up and she says, I'm on my way to my husband's funeral. And I didn't want to drink today, so I came to a meeting.
Damn.
And I asked God for a sign that I was going to be okay. And our wedding date was April 23rd of 94.
Yeah.
Her wedding date was the date of my surgery. And I was like, what is that? I mean, you could hear a pin drop in the room. It was so powerful. And that gave her the strength to get through her husband's funeral.
That's dope.
It was beautiful.
So beautiful. Life is so beautiful.
Oof. Like that was a long time ago. It still makes me cry because it was such a tangible feeling of God in the room.
Yeah. It's so beautiful.
Oh, it's amazing. And I haven't been involved with 12-step recovery for a little bit. Still have reverence for it, respect it, just building my business and diving into neuroscience. But I just want to thank you for your take on it and your positioning, because it's allowed me to revisit the most beautiful moments of my experience in the program, because I had some not so good ones and mostly self-imposed, but like I got hung up on that it's the people, not the program type stuff, and wasn't taking care of myself, that sort of thing. But you really, your presence and your viewpoint and the mission that you took on with your book is really inspiring. And I've had a lot to say about certain things in the past, which is why I prompted that question about, bringing up stuff when it comes to 12-step recovery. There's a big risk, and people are very protective, and also the people who aren't protective are just judgmental, you know what I mean? And they're taking an opportunity to like take stabs or whatever. So, man, it takes a lot of courage, and I just really wanted to acknowledge you for that and say thank you.
Thanks. I do have a perspective on the people that kind of piss you off that might be kind of helpful.
Yeah, I'm open for anything. Trust me when it comes to that.
So it's funny how, these rooms are full of people who are at different stages of healing, right? But there's a lot of dysfunction, right? It's not the hotbed of mental health, right? So a lot of these people will trigger you. And I would argue it's not a bad thing to be, quote unquote, triggered or get angry, because people are just mirrors. You can't love or hate something about somebody else unless it's something you love or hate about yourself. So if we can kind of take this information, take our feelings that are arising, and start to question and get curious, what's underneath that? Why am I reacting to this? Like, what is underneath? Typically, we have a judgment about somebody else, and because of the way they're behaving. But if we are mirrors, if you can't love her, that means we are indirectly judging ourselves. You can't escape the same measuring stick that you judge others by. And so so this process of, my sponsor, I would go to my sponsor. It's like, oh, this person did this and that. And she's like, okay, let's do an inventory on your feelings. What is being triggered in you? And we would get to something. They say if a reaction is hysterical, it's historical. So she would help me go back through an inventory process and be like, when did I feel this way before? What's at the root cause? What is my part? And I would gain clarity and empathy for the other person. And by finding compassion for another person for this specific type of behavior, she'd often ask me, have you ever done that thing? Have you ever been condescending? Have you ever been rude? Have you ever taken someone's inventory? And I'd be like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you want justice or do you want forgiveness for yourself? And I was like, well, I want forgiveness for me. She's like, okay, well, as you forgive others, so are you forgiven, right? So it started to heal me. And Marianne Williamson is this author of A Return to Love, and she gave this analogy. It's like, a gemologist will take two raw amethysts, and put them in a tumbler together, right? A rock tumbler. And as they bump up against each other, they smooth off their rough edges and they come out smooth and clean. And I feel like that's what AA and meetings are like. We get thrown into this tumbler and we mix it up with all these people, but as we do the work of healing and forgiving, it's mostly self-forgiveness, but bringing compassion and love and God and all that stuff into this, our rough edges are kind of smoothed out, right? So I would argue that it's good to be around people who are going to piss you off because they're actually your healers. They're the trailheads that help you go deeper and find out what's really going on. And then if you have the courage, it takes so much courage to be able to stick with it. If you have the courage to stick with it, you will come out of that a very peaceful person.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good reminder. There's oftentimes in my life I've had the focus of the world is just a mirror, and it allows me to, maintain steadiness and puts me in a position of growth. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for everything that you're doing and that you've done. Just really great conversation today.
Where at in Idaho are you, by the way?
Where are you?
I'm near Boise.
Boise.
Okay.
Nice.
I used to visit, it was up near Coeur d'Alene, Lewiston.
Oh, yeah, that's north. Yeah, we're sort of.
There's a big paper mill there. I just remember the smell getting off the plane. But I think Idaho's beautiful. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We moved here about 6 years ago, and I'm from Silicon Valley, right? Like a high tech. It's super fun. And then our friends were like, "Oh, we're moving to Idaho," and I'm like, "Idaho? Why Idaho?" And then I started looking at real estate. In Silicon Valley, it's crazy expensive there. I saw what you could get. We went from like 1,100 square feet little house to like 4,500 square feet here in brand new. I was like, I'm moving. So it's been it's beautiful here, but it's been a good.
I love that. Well, Arlina, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
We like to end with do you have anything you'd like to share before we head out, and then we're gonna give you a little plug.
I would just like to share that if you could focus on one thing, it would be self-compassion. You can't hate yourself well. It's just the opposite. It's love that heals. So just remember to be a little more gentle and kinder to yourself than you think is necessary.
I love that. So where can we find you?
So my hub, the website is soberlifeschool.com. You can get access to the podcast and my book. And I even offer, if you want to do a little strategy call, people can put time on my calendar to see. Sometimes people just need a direction to be pointed into, like what resources. And I have a ton of resources outside of 12-step. There's so many resources. So I'm not just a 12-step girl, but I have a ton of resources. So if you just need a little, if you want to run something by me and I can offer, maybe fill in some gaps, they can put time on my calendar too.
Awesome.
I like that. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate you. I appreciate you. It's been a great conversation. I know the listeners are going to love it. And we just want to wish you a great weekend, a great Mother's Day weekend, and a great, abundant life for you and everybody that you touch.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for connecting with us on today's episode of the Emotion Podcast, where we discuss all things mental health. Connect every week as we explore incredibly intimate stories of persistence and hope, delve into mental health education, and explore valuable resources. Available on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And visit emotionwellness.com for more information.